everyone. Happy Friday. We did it. We made it through another week, and now it is time for Happy Hour. Happy Hour is a stream that I do on my second channel, youtube.com/activelyunwoke, every single week on 5 Fridays. There we go. And this is where we watch a woke training or presentation of some sort in its full and complete form, and we talk about it, and we drink some beers, or it seems as though Deborah has a nice glass of Pinot Grigio. You can also drink tea. Got some Earl Grey going on, some Dr. Pepper, if you will. You can drink whatever you want to drink. It's all right. We won't judge. I will be drinking today. And this is not a day where you get to vote on the beer, partially because, as Casmar says, we got a lot of snow today in New Hampshire, and I didn't go to the beer store, so I have to go into the reserves. So you guys don't get a vote today on the beer, but you're going to survive. I promise. It'll be okay. But we are going to watch a full woke training in all of its glory, the boring bits, the cringy bits, and we're going to learn about what these people are doing and what they're teaching when they think that we aren't listening. Now, today we're going back to basics. We're going old school. We don't really get that many of these anymore. Ever since all this giant spotlight has been put on critical race theory, we don't get many of these anymore because they're getting sneaky now. They're calling it something else. They're not putting the videos of it online, but we lucked out with today's video. Let me tell you what. Look what we're going to be watching. This is a lecture. Let me just get a screen here where you can actually see the intro slide, maybe. Oh, maybe not. I don't know. Hang on. Let's see if we can find something. Well, oh, there it is. There it is. Here's what we're going to be watching today. This was a lecture that was given at the University of Puget Sound just 1 month ago. A good old-fashioned lecture about whiteness, a primer on the core barrier to racial liberation. Guys, this is going to be a banner day for bingo. Get your Unwoke bingo cards. It is pinned to the top of the chat on YouTube because I think we might get some bingos today. It's a hunch. Maybe I'm wrong, but let me read the description for you. What is whiteness? How is it different than white people? It's kind of like what I've been telling you guys, that whiteness doesn't actually mean skin color. Whiteness means capitalism. How is whiteness different than white people? And what is the relevance to racial liberation? Dr. Cabrera will explore the historical development and contemporary relevance of whiteness to racial oppression and higher education practice. He will then explore how the path towards liberation means communism, requires engaging, disrupting, and transforming whiteness into a process. This sounds like one of the most commie lectures we have heard in a good long time. And it's perfect too, because guess what? Guess what we're doing tomorrow for Socialism Saturday? I found the best for this is like side note. If you're subscribed on my main channel, we do Socialism Saturday every Saturday at 6 p.m. I also stream them on Odyssey, Rockfin, Rumble, exactly like I'm streaming this right now. And I have got the most amazing socialist roundtable tomorrow. And it was from just 2 days ago from one of our old favorites, Haymarket Books. And we're going to be watching a queer Marxism roundtable tomorrow at round about 6 p.m. So that's going to be, I think, just a really great compliment to the absolute abject communism that we are going to get in this here lecture. Trust me, this is going to be one for the books. It's also really long. It's like 2 hours long. So hopefully there's a good long Q&A session. You guys know I love the Q&A session. They say some of the wackiest shit in the Q&A sessions compared to the actual content. They're going to say wacky stuff in the content too. Don't get me wrong, but the Q&A, if they do that, it's going to be off the chain. I can feel this already. All right, now before we get started, we do have a couple orders of business. I am really excited to announce that I have finally launched the Schools Exposed website. Okay, I haven't launched the whole thing yet. There's still some back-end stuff I'm tinkering around with, like, and I won't go into the details. This is part of what has taken this website so long to launch, is like the back-end stuff. And finally today I was like, you know what? We're getting the website up. I can fix the back-end stuff later. It's fine. I am so thrilled to be launching Schools Exposed, schoolsexposed.com. Schools Exposed is the training program that I'm going to be launching next month to help train 10,000 parents how to find out what the schools are teaching their kids. And this is going to kind of be like the home base for it. I actually got schoolsexposed.com. But I'm really excited about it. It's just a basic website, not a whole lot on it right now, but there's a lot that's going to be coming, and I'm just really excited to have it up. And this is where you can go to find out more about the Schools Exposed program, or you can join it if you want to. It'll take you right over to the Indiegogo campaign, where you can get all sorts of perks, including being one of the first group to get access to the program when it launches in January. I'm really excited about it. And so you can check out that at schoolsexposed.com. And because I launched it, I'm drinking cake beer for the first beer of the day to celebrate that this website is finally up and live on the internet in some form. Not in its full form, but in some form. And that's good enough for right now. Never let perfection get in the way of good enough. So that's really exciting. And then, of course, if you want to support the work I'm doing, there are all sorts of other ways to do it. Schools Exposed is a great option if you want to give to that. But if you just want to give generally, you can join Patreon, or you can join my locals, or you can join my Substack. Lots going on. We do have a movie night coming up this weekend for my supporter Discord. Sadly for me, my community is making me watch Die Hard. I have never seen Die Hard. I have really resisted watching Die Hard, but my community voted. It was going to be either that or Nightmare Before Christmas or National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. They chose Die Hard. I'm going to suck it up. We're doing movie night on Sunday in the supporter Discord. It is the last movie night of the year, and I will finally pop my Die Hard cherry. And so you can join me by becoming a member of my Patreon, member of my locals, or yeah, those are our two options for right now, I suppose. So that's coming up. Now, you also want to make sure you're downloading your Unwoke bingo card for today on YouTube. This is pinned to the top of the chat. And Unwoke bingo works like any other bingo game, I suppose. You just go ahead and you generate your card. All cards are unique to you. And then you get a free square in the middle. And then every time one of these terms is said out loud, you go ahead and cross that off. You're looking for lines or you're looking for a corner. All four corners. If you get a bingo, then shout out bingo in the chat. You won't win anything, but we will applaud you and we will celebrate you and we will give you a virtual high five. And then once we get a a bingo, then we're going for blackout bingo. And we've never actually gotten a blackout bingo on a happy hour. The only time we've ever gotten a blackout bingo was during a Schools Exposed investigation stream of the Portland, Oregon public schools. So it makes sense. Of course, we're going to get a blackout bingo on that. But we've never actually gotten a blackout bingo on happy hour. Today could be the day. This is a very critical race theory heavy bingo card. I believe in all of you. I'm cheering for the blackout bingo today. And I really do hope someone gets it. All right. Let's pour this beer, shall we? This is a birthday cake malt beverage in celebration of me finally launching some version of the Schools Exposed website, not the full version. But you know what? It sucks because I was working on this like all day and I was really, really trying to get it up. And now I just want to work on that website. Like, this is how websites go for me. Was it Cambridge? No, it's Portland that we got the blackout bingo for. Here's our birthday cake, malt beverage. Cheers, guys. Happy Friday. How pretty is that? It's like a smoothie and a cake in the form of a beer. Cheers to all of you. Thank you for joining me to torture yourself. No, I have Das Hydra too. But I thought cake was appropriate for celebration, bot. All right, guys, let's get this party started. It's been a weird day, man. I'll tell you what. It has been a weird ass day, but a productive day, a good day. All right. God, we haven't done one of these in a while. We're going to make it. We're going to make it. Let's do it.
Beside the Salish Sea,
Oh, starting off with a land acknowledgement, but we're also starting off with my sound not working the way it should, so hang on 1 second. So if you got that land acknowledgement bingo square, you already got one. We aren't even into it yet. All right, let's try again.
Every opportunity for learning and growth, but please do so with an awareness of the living heritage of the land on which we stand. And now you get to see a short clip with highlights from the 2018 Race and Pedagogy National Conference.
Oh, good. There's a Race and Pedagogy National Conference. Did you know that? I didn't know that. Oh, do we get to see the clip, or are they just playing it in the background, apparently? Let's fast forward. Oh. We don't have sound. That's on their end. That's not on my end. As we know from Socialism Saturday, socialists suck at technology. Oh. Oh, no. Oh, they're trying real hard. No, we're not going to get the sound for this clip, apparently. All right, we'll just fast forward through this.
Sir, you brought your vision to our campus today. And by our history and our experiences, we shouldn't be anything but this.
They're literally just holding the microphone up to the speaker. That's why the sound sucks.
Your imagination is one that makes us dare to struggle, dare to stand, dare to hope for and fight for this America of a great
we'll be here, Maximus.
That might meet its highest promise.
What if, as you came out of this weekend, you could thank yourself for something you did in these 48 hours that made the future better? We have built into all of us old blueprints of expectation and response and old structures of repression.
Just in case people don't know where Puget Sound is, does anyone know where the University of Puget Sound is? This is your first pop quiz in the chat. Does anyone want to take a guess at where this university is? Speaking of Portland, Oregon being the only time we've gotten a blackout bingo on the Unwoke bingo card, it might be in proximity to the University of Puget Sound. Yes, it is somewhere in Washington State. It is not too far away from the woke capitals of Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington. Seattle was another crazy school investigation stream we did. But so this is America in 2022. I'm going to fast forward through this because we can't hear it anyway. All right. They have a Race and Pedagogy Institute at the University of Puget Sound. That might be a place that might be interesting to check out. Seems like a good use of taxpayer money. If that's I don't know if it's a private or a public school. Still wearing masks. This was last month, and this woman is still wearing a mask. This was last month.
Just fantastic. Welcome. We are so glad to see so many of you out here tonight for this wonderful event. Race and Pedagogy Institute hosting Whiteness, a primer on the core barrier to racial liberation, with Dr. Nolan Cabrera, clearly a man of many talents. My name is Nancy Bristow, and I'm a member of the Race and Pedagogy Institute's leadership team.
Of course she
is. To be up on this stage, in fact, to welcome all of you. I'm supposed to give you just a quick sense of the plan for the evening, a run of show, as they say in the biz. We're going to start out with a few members of the leadership team providing some context and history, and in particular, an introduction then of our guest, who will then grace us with a lecture of 45 minutes to an hour. We'll have plenty of time after that for some question and answer.
Oh, I need to do
and
captions.
Then closing thoughts again from a member of the leadership team.
Yeah,
then
I'll
after
do full
the
screen
event,
too.
we'll also be having a reception down in the basement. And we invite all of you to join us for that. It should be a nice chance to share our thinking about the important words that we're going to hear.
We are not going to hear important words. I just want to break the news.
Of our associated students.
We are not going to hear important words today.
We also donated funding for this lecture tonight. Senator-at-Large Jackson Dennis will be coming up in just a moment. He is a member of our business leadership program with an emphasis in legal studies and also Spanish minor. Importantly, I would add to that not only these really important academic achievements and pursuits, but also a member of our football team, which means
okay, so what I want everyone to do, because I can hear the sound is going to be soft on their end. Again, socialists suck at technology, like universally. So what I'm going to do, I suspect I'm a lot louder than them, is I'm going to I need everyone to cooperate with me on this, okay? I'm going to turn down my microphone volume. And what I need everyone to do is to turn up the volume on your personal computer so that we start to level out my microphone and their microphone. And if you don't want to cooperate, bot, it's up to you. But I'm just saying it's going to be a more pleasant experience for everyone, okay? So I've turned my microphone volume down. I have turned my personal volume up so I can still actually hear myself. And hopefully this levels things out.
Looks out on the football field. So I know what it means. It means
let me know if that's good. If that works for you guys.
And representing. And in addition, he's also a resident community coordinator, which again suggests the kind of integrity and important leadership that this young man's showing on our campus. So please join me up here, Jackson Dennis. You got this, bro. You got this.
Thank you for that introduction, Dr. Bristow. I appreciate that.
Not everyone likes
hello,
that
everybody.
bot.
My name is Jackson Dennis, as previously mentioned. I'm a ASOP's senator, and I was recently elected to serve as the identity-based club liaison. I'm also a resident coordinator of the football team and leadership program.
Again, sound issues on their end, not mine.
I also serve on the university's budget task force. RPI leadership has asked me to share my thoughts on today's guest lecture titled Whiteness, a Primer on the Core Barrier to Racial Liberation with Dr. I would like to reflect on my personal experiences regarding where this primer is in campus-wide leadership. As recently as last week, during an on-campus meeting, I experienced and witnessed a scenario involved with whiteness at its core. In this meeting, I felt the need to censor myself. The lack of representation in that conference room that day kept my voice quiet. Whiteness kept my voice quiet.
Oh my God. I am always hesitant to pick on young people. I don't like it. It doesn't feel good. People like him have been deceived by every single adult in their lives to believe what they do. It is not their fault. However, he's an adult. And so he doesn't fall under my normal rule of we don't make fun of children because he's a college student. He's going to turn into a little woke SJW leader. And that's just and so we have to treat him like an adult. The problem is with the microphone on his end. He doesn't know how to use the microphone. We have the captions on. There's nothing I can do about it though. Hopefully they figure it out. This is a very consistent theme with us and this type of content is there's always sound issues, but I trust me, it's on his end, it's not on ours. It's barely coming through for mine. But we do have the captions. But what he just said is just last week at a meeting I experienced whiteness, and I suppressed my voice because of a lack of representation in the room. This kid is literally saying that he didn't say something that he wanted to say in a meeting because there were too many white people in the meeting.
This meeting was about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I was only one of two diverse bodies in that room of 20 people. But I let the whiteness silence me. And this imposed silence caused a missed opportunity for growth and understanding from that space. Conversely,
and that's your fault, Junior. That's your fault, not their fault, your fault.
For my voice to be heard. During high school, I was relentlessly targeted while playing football, about 4 to 5 times per practice, I was called racial slurs, including the N-word.
Bullshit.
Despite attempting to manage my situation
Bullshit.
directly with my teammates, it did not stop.
You're telling us that in the Pacific Northwest, you were called the N-word several times a week at football practice and no one said anything? Things that didn't happen. Bullshit.
I then involved my coaching staff, and when no conversations
Like,
were
at
had,
least tell a believable lie, dude.
I decided to escalate the situation to my school's principal. Again, after no further conversation.
This whole thing's going to be a struggle session. You can already
there
feel it.
was only a
Can everyone
brief
feel the struggle session coming through?
punishment listed on those teammates who got additional conditioning on the field. Whiteness took over when those teammates told me to also participate in this punishment. The punishment meant for that. I realized at that point that my voice was not heard. Once more, I engaged the district superintendent, at which time some discussion took place, but did not involve individuals responsible or recognize the bigger picture. Finally, I sought out my state representative, who I knew was a Black woman and a small business owner in my community. Representative Bynum and I persisted together. In 2019, a bill sponsored by Representative Bynum passed in the state of Oregon. This bill sought to elevate sportsmanship and put an end to racism on the playing field, in the stands, and in the locker room. If I hadn't spoken out, and if Representative Bynum had never run for state representative, steps would have never been taken to begin breaking down these barriers rooted in whiteness.
All right, is everyone managing with the sound? I just want to check in because I'm seeing some complaints. I can try to raise the sound in the browser if people are not managing, but if it's just one person, then I'm going to leave it like it is. Because again, guys, you got to turn the volume up on your computer. Is everyone good with the sound? Okay. Seems like most people are okay. So we're going to try this for right now. And hopefully, fingers crossed, God willing, the sound improves. It usually does tend to improve as the thing goes on. So we'll just see.
This is one of the reasons why and how the primer affects individuals of every age and demographic. My experience is another perfect example of why these conversations and recognitions of the actual issues are crucial for change. I was isolated after this incident, making it hard for me to continue to speak up. But I had to. We all have to. In closing, I wanted to thank you all for being here and being part of this conversation. I look forward to progress and representation, and progress in being heard in spaces of leadership. Without further ado, Professor Brackett.
Hopefully Professor Brackett knows how to use a microphone. Listen to that clapping. They got a full room of students.
I want to do a mic check because I can hear myself really clearly up here, but I was sitting there and I couldn't hear Jackson. So I want to check that everybody is hearing.
See, it wasn't just us, guys. Emphasize says astrologers gonna suck something bricks because we are leaving the age of Virgo, headed into Leo. Virginity isn't coveted and lions are going their own way. That's not true at all. Emphasize, we're in the age of Aquarius. Have you learned nothing from me? Emphasize. Yeah, she does indeed know how to use a microphone. So hopefully this will be better already.
Clearly. Okay. All right. So maybe it's just the front because it was really muffled and I wanted to make sure you heard every word that he said because you should have, and it was really important. And I also want to make sure you can hear me. If you can hear me, then you can hear Dr. Livingston, and then we want to make sure you can hear Cabrera. So please just let us know if you're hearing, if something's going on. It's okay to pause. It's important what we're sharing today. So thank you again for coming.
It's not important at all.
I will say that watching that video, this is not a part of my script, but watching that video reminded me of all that work and all the faces and so many people that are in here right now that were up there. It was really a great thing to see. And I thought about Nancy Bristow running around, being our logistics person and all that. And so it was nice to see that and to see how it's going to connect to what I have to say as I share some history of RPI with you all and some more context. So good evening. My name is Dr. LaToya Brackett, and I'm an assistant professor in African American Studies here at the University of Puget Sound. I'm also on the leadership team for the Race and Pedagogy Institute. I came in as a visiting assistant professor in the fall of 2017, and right away, I was launched into my leadership role for RPI and into planning of the 2018
I wonder if she
National
ever went to
Conference.
Evergreen State
So
College.
RPI has always been a part of my existence here. I guess I'm lucky that
Is
way.
there any Evergreen overlap?
So
is my
the white
question.
primer was always visible to me, even under all the colorful layers. So let me first thank you all for being here with us. This event is happening because it's been 20 years since the words race and pedagogy were written together. These words launched a 20-year movement led by community voice, knowledge, and experiences. Expectations that we all would do the work towards eliminating racism. Structurally housed in a place of higher education, the Race and Pedagogy Institute's mission to educate students and teachers at all levels to think critically about race, cultivate terms and practices for societal transformation, and eliminate racism has been at the foundation of diversity and inclusion progress here, which, and
She's like, progress.
Thank you, Nolan. Okay, let me go back.
Progress.
So let me say the mission again here. All right, so our mission to educate students and teachers at all levels to think critically about race, cultivate terms and practices for societal transformation, and eliminate racism has been at the foundation of diversity and inclusion progress here at the University of Puget Sound. There's a West African proverb that says something like this: in order to know where you are going, you must know where you have been. So where have we been?
God.
Where have we been at RPI, and where have we been as a university? Before the leadership of the Race and Pedagogy Institute, begun by Dr. Grace Livingston, current chair of African American Studies and a member of the Race and Pedagogy leadership team, alongside former director of African American Studies and RPI, Dr. Dexter Gordon, this university did not have all that it has today. Let me share some of what would not be at our university without the leadership of the Race and Pedagogy Institute. The African American Studies program, as a minor and now a major, wouldn't be here if it wasn't for RPI and especially the community partners. The first and still the only Black female tenured full professor would not yet exist. RPI led the way for a Dean of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion position, now elevated to a Vice President position of Institutional Equity and Diversity. The KNOW requirement, which stands for Knowledge, Identity, and Power, which is basically a diversity credit for all students, was co-created with RPI leadership team. One dearest to my heart came last year when an African-American male student athlete was our commencement speaker for graduation, and a Chamorro female student athlete was a convocation speaker. Both were African-American Studies majors. 2 students of color on both graduation stages. 2 student athletes on both graduation stages. 2 African-American Studies alumni. This would not have been possible without our leadership. This was Puget Sound history. The Race and Pedagogy National Conference would have never been here, bringing thousands of people to our campus every 4 years from 2006 to 2018. Even most profound, the work of RPI leadership placed race at the center of all classes in 2018 for one day, because the conference was our students' classrooms. Because of the faculty and the leadership of RPI, starting in 2015, we've had multiple years in a row of students of color as presidents for the Associated Students of the University of Puget Sound, or ASUPs, beginning with Lakeisha Renee Jones and closing out in 2021 with Nicole Corino. Under the 2017 president, Amanda Diaz, and continued with the leadership of Colin Nobles, president in 2018, we were able to bring 2 of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter to speak, and the work of Diaz and Nobles brings us here tonight. ASUP sets aside funds for a race and pedagogy speaker in the year of the conference. This is that year. I will pause my list here. We do not have all the time to do that. But this is some of our history. This is some of where we have been. Additionally, if you look around the room, there is documentation of some of the things we've been doing over time, but especially in the last 4 years since the last conference, because Race and Pedagogy Institute continues to do their work. This work is every day, and every day we show up. So I want to shift back to ASUPs for a second, and first I want to thank Jackson Dennis for raising his voice. I'm glad we as RPI were here to see his voice was ready to be raised again. As one of the few students of color in student government, we know he works hard to simply exist, to simply show up, because we've been there too. His voice today is a reminder of the constant requirement for all of us to work towards ending racism, especially if it does not directly harm you. You know, whiteness keeps many of us, people of color, quiet. Because even if we do speak, often we are not heard. ASAP students of color presidents altered the structure of student government to ensure moments like tonight would indeed push us, at least every 4 years, to rekindle the mission of the Race and Pedagogy Institute, which should be the mission of the University of Puget Sound. Because in the words of Desmond Tutu, my humanity is bound up in yours, for we can only be human together.
Anything they
We
have to
lost too
do.
many voices,
Anything.
silenced too many.
Anything they
listened
have
to
to
too
do
many.
at all.
But here we are, in a year when the Race and Pedagogy National Conference should have occurred. In the years leading up to now, we were consistently told no or to wait for things needed in our everyday work. Yet consistently we were asked, when's the conference? There have been voices encouraging us to have it, voices offering us temporary resources for a 3-day event that takes 2 years to plan, but they tell us no for full-time and year-round positions. These voices ignore or must be immune to our everyday battle against racism, or perhaps it's the primer at the core barrier of racial liberation. I'm looking forward to this engagement with Dr. Cabrera tonight because I foresee his talk fulfilling that West African proverb, informing us about where we have been in order for us to know where we are going. Because personally, I'm tired of everyone telling us what the future Race and Pedagogy Conference means to them. I have wanted to know what all the conferences before have meant to them. I want them to show me what they have meant to them, because what I have seen since the last conference is not the same energy given when asking for the next conference. So in closing, the Race and Pedagogy Institute works to eliminate racism 24 hours a day and 7 days a week, not for a few days every 4 years, because people of color never get a break from racism. As it is the primer our lives are built upon. Racism is 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. So too,
That
is the
doesn't
work
sound
we are asking
debilitating.
of you. So after tonight, I hope.
So they're basically telling them there ain't nothing you can ever do about racism. It's always going to be there. It's every day, but you all need to suffer and do the work anyway. Even though there's nothing we can ever do about it, it's always going to be there. Emphasize says, turn around, bright eyes, Coldplay, fix you in yellow, and so many more, but don't believe your lying eyes, but what do I know? Cryptic as always, emphasize, cryptic as always.
We'll all be ready to peel back the colorful layers and scrape off that primer to begin building a new coat of primer, one rooted in liberation. Thank you, and let's welcome Dr. Grace Livingston.
Hang on. Pop quiz. What is the definition of critical race theory? We haven't done this in a while. Critical race theory is an ideology that started in academia in the 70s that says racism exists everywhere, in every person, in everything, in every interaction, and the job of the critical race theorist is to explore how, not if, how racism occurs in every single circumstance, because racism is always assumed to have occurred. For those of you who think that we don't have to deal with this stuff anymore, remind yourself that this lecture was 1 month ago. This is still completely everywhere in the universities. This is still in the public schools. Just because the news cycle is focusing on something else doesn't mean that this is a problem. And I promise you guys, it is going to come in handy for you to memorize the definition of critical race theory. Please just memorize the definition of critical race theory. I had a conversation with someone about a month ago, and this is a person who's been watching my content for like a long time, and I have beat the dead horse of this definition over and over and over again. And this person came up to me and said, "Karlyn, I always heard you talk about your definition, but I never memorized it. And then I was asked the definition of critical race theory and I didn't know it. And I said to her, I was like, you'll never forget it again." Memorize the definition of critical race theory. Any definition. It doesn't need to be mine. You can memorize any definition, but just have a definition at the ready where you can go, this is what critical race theory is, without Googling, without looking in your phone, without saying, it's racist. Because like every time someone is asked, what is the definition of critical race theory? And they don't know an actual definition, they just scream and cry and whine, which is what they tend to do. They make us all look stupid. You don't want to make us all look stupid. Just memorize a definition. It's really not that hard. I promise you.
Thank you, Dr. Brackett,
Gosh.
and thank you.
She's even better at the microphone.
Thank you for so much and for your work
You
and
are
your
stunning
leadership
and
amongst
brave
us
and
to
beautiful.
make this evening possible. Could I get a round of applause for Dr. Brackett, please?
Yes, another round of applause. Stunning and brave. Stunning and brave. For your stance against racism.
My name is Grace Livingston, and I'm part of the leadership team of the Race and Pedagogy Institute. It is with much
give
regard
good
and a
microphone.
sense of what this moment means that I contribute to the voices and minds on this stage thus far by seeking to introduce and further welcome this significant scholar, teacher, advocate, Dr. Nolan Cabrera. Dr. Nolan Cabrera is professor at the University of Arizona in the Center for the Study of Higher Education. He's part of the faculty of the Educational Policy Studies Department and Practice. He's part of the Faculty of American Indian Studies, that's fine, and also part of the faculty of the Social, Cultural, and Critical Theory Department. We welcome him in a moment that signifies much. This is the 20th anniversary of the academic year 2002-2003, when the words race and pedagogy were first named in juxtaposition to one another. That juxtaposition was a lightning rod.
Thank you,
was a
emphasize.
flashpoint to have those two words together on this campus. The juxtaposition of race and pedagogy was posed as a searing question, an analytic and affective question in the face of repeated enactment of blackface minstrelsy on the campus of the University of Puget Sound. These are enactments that call up what Dr. Cabrera, in the opening chapter of his award-winning book, White Guys, On Campus Racism, White Immunity, and the Myth of Post-Racial Higher Education, what Dr. Cabrera calls the unbearable whiteness of being. The unbearable consequences, the violence, the soul and spirit and life-taking impact of what it means to be inured, what it means to be recalcitrant, unyielding in the face of structural and actual everyday and epistemological acts of white supremacy. African American Studies responded. It responded with its critical, open, public voice of questioning. It responded because of the imperatives of the intellectual, historical, and community forces that forged its foundation in predominantly white institutions, but more
It responded because most college professors are
white
Marxists.
institutions in
That's
the
why.
1960s.
Because most of them are Marxists.
What is going on at the University of Puget Sound in relationship to the issue of race? What should we make of the fact of the events of 2002, the blackface performances as part of a homecoming concert, and the Infinite Monkeys Festival that would emerge a year later?
What the fuck is that?
Why do these events have
What
such
is an
striking
Infinite Monkeys
similarities?
Festival? Hang on.
This call,
Infinite
this bearing
Monkeys
down into the
Festival.
ground of Puget Sound, into what Dr. Cabrera would further theorize in this text, what
Like-
he would theorize as the ecologies of white.
The infinite monkeys theorem isn't the infinite monkey theorem is basically if you sat a monkey at a typewriter and gave that monkey like an infinite amount of time, that monkey would eventually just bang on the keys to perfectly type out Macbeth. That's what the infinite monkey theorem is, I think. But what is the infinite monkey festival? I don't know. I don't see anything for it on like Google or anything. Hang on. I'm actually curious about this now. Infinite Monkey Festival. It just seems like it has to do with the infinite monkey theorem. It has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with race at all. They did do a land blessing, yes.
Of higher education and of the University of Puget Sound. These questions were raised.
There is
by
really infinite
Professor
monkey
Dr.
festivals, but it has nothing to do with race. It has to do with the
founding
infinite
director
monkey
of
theorem.
RPI, the Race and Pedagogy Institute, and the African American Studies program in his open letter to the University of Puget Sound community. Dr. Gordon's open letter continued by asking, amidst the turbulence, what does it mean that
Yes.
at the University of Puget Sound we keep getting repeated responses?
That's exactly
We're
right.
not racist. We
They
meant no
assumed
harm.
it was racist
We
because
did
it had
not
the word
know.
monkey in it.
Repeatedly. What does it mean that this ignorance is so costly, and costly for some more than others?
Redwood the Elf, king or queen of the chat. I'm not
What does
sure
it
your
mean
gender.
to
King or queen of the
repeatedly
chat. That's funny as
enact
shit.
the scaffoldings of white supremacy?
Congratulations.
The primers of white supremacy.
Guys, just so you know, if you're new to my chat, so there are rules in my chat. We don't, no one's breaking the rules right now. It's kind of like Fridays are a chill stream, but the rules in my chat are, yeah, don't be a dick and no whining. But if I dub you king or queen of the chat for making me laugh or saying something exceptionally smart or funny, you can break the rules and say whatever you want. It's more of an honorific. I know Redwood the Elf would never break the rules, but that's funny, and that's going to get you a king or queen of the chat for the day.
In a system, an educational system that seems to continue to recreate it without consequence. What has become the work of the Race and Pedagogy Institute and its Community Partners Forum and broader communities of engagement and the campus and engagement with campus constituencies has constantly sought to invest in the work of the long haul.
Now everyone's purposefully breaking the rules.
Work of reimagining, radically reimagining in hard, concrete, community, pedagogical practices, what's the relationship between learning and liberation?
Liberation means socialism.
That long haul work involves rupturing the logics of domination. It involves undoing miseducation, which is what we talked about at the 2018 Race and Pedagogy National Conference. It asks the question, what will happen if we dig into that primer? Are any new social contracts and publics possible? What can happen with this ecology of whiteness?
The ecology of whiteness?
Dr.
I haven't
Cabrera,
heard that.
our special speaker this evening, carries with
The
him
ecology.
such rupturing dispositions.
Don't push me, emphasize.
As he provided expert testimony, bore historical, contemporary, and ancestral witness in the
Emphasize
largest
being a
ethnic
dick.
studies case thus far in the country, Gonzalez v. Douglas, overturning the ban on ethnic studies in 2017. He went into this fight in the name of the long haul, in the name of the historical debt owed to communities of color, enacted through that ban, the 2011 ban, that effectively wiped out Mexican American studies in Tucson, Arizona. Dr. Christina Acosta, in her 2019 essay in Ethnic Studies Review, notes that Dr. Cabrera spoke boldly to the disorientations, the structural and bodily ones that were happening to students, to the disequilibriums in their lives that were taking place in the face of this ban. He called for asking different questions about the knowledge ecology of race and pedagogy and its foundations in Arizona's ecology, Arizona's educational ecology. He bore witness of the consequences of the loss of the knowledge of the Chicano movement and what that meant to students. He charged the state and called out the proliferations of white fear and the upholding of epistemic ignorance. This critical scholar exercised sustained epistemic and actual humanity by understanding his debt to race, pedagogy, and community. Dr. Acosta continues. She says to us, Dr. Cabrera met with educators through the network they built. The network expanded after the ban, and Dr. Cabrera continued consistently to attend meetings with former educators and students. He understood
He did the
that higher
emotional
education
labor.
did not stand in hierarchical arrogance to community. He invested in that undoing with humility and with boldness. Help me welcome to our stage this deeply embedded scholar working and living at the nexus of race, pedagogy, and community to speak to us on whiteness, a primer.
Thank
on
God,
the core
finally.
barrier to racial liberation. Dr. Nolan Cabrera.
Pray he knows how to microphone. Is he wearing a different mic? Please.
Hear me okay?
No.
Well, I needed to brush off a fear. I've never been introduced on that.
Oh God, they made it worse.
Okay, got me a little choked up right before I'm trying to talk, so I'm gonna power through it. But those words mean a great deal to me, and I hope that my words tonight will mean a great deal to you as well. Even though I come to you from Tucson, Arizona, I very much come to you from Big Bendville, Oregon, where I am raised for the first 18 years of my life.
I apologize on
And
their
while I do
behalf. They
DEI
made the
work
sound
throughout
worse.
the country, I try to do anti-racist work throughout the country. It's always an extraordinarily special homecoming when I can be in the Pacific Northwest. Now, there are some in Seattle who get a little annoyed when I lump Oregon and Washington together. But just
No, they're
trust,
the same.
it's not about y'all, it's about the Californians to say that we are all just basically Southern Canada, and I want to push back against that. But having said that, this was also part of my own stomping ground when I was younger. It always has a humidity, and also, unlike Tucson, you have rain. I know that y'all are tired of it already, but for me, as an Oregon boy, I love the gray. I need the gray. But you didn't come here to hear me wax poetic about the Oregon-Washington commonality. Although there will be some that will be brought up in the context of Northwest whiteness. But what I'm going to talk about today is exactly that issue of whiteness and what it is, how it was constructed, how it informs higher education policy and practice, and what are some key things that we can do about it. Now, that last part is going to be very tricky because I will offer some ideas, some things that I've seen, some amazing practices that I've witnessed over the course of my career and development involved. But please, please, please do not think that you leave out of here and be like, no, Dr. Cecil doesn't think people have an anti-racist institution. It doesn't work like that. As all of the previous speakers have said, it's taken decades and centuries to get to this point, and it's going to take probably not as long, but it's going to take a very long time for us to undo the oppressive harm that has been done. So in order to begin this conversation, I want to start off with 3 non-controversial premises. You're going to see that they're non-controversial in scare quotes. They are, number one, and this is sort of my ontological orientation vis-a-vis higher education in the United States. So I'm not picking up Puget Sound entirely. This is just what happens here and nationally. Number one, institutions of higher education exist on land stolen from the original stewards of Native American people.
A second land
Many of the
blessing.
original U.S. institutions of higher education
Wow.
were built with slave and exploited labor. And number three, the access to institutions has historically been restricted by racially privileged white people at the expense of all others. Now, pretty straightforward, but unfortunately, the fact is that these are actually controversial statements in a lot of areas. And the fact that they are does not mean that they are radical. It actually shows the opposite, how a lot of the radicalism is coming from whiteness and is very much very much offering a lot of white fragility when it is called out, when it is identified. The core components of whiteness is to be invisible. And I don't mean invisible to people of color because we bear the brunt of a lot of the racialized violence that occurs as a result of whiteness. I'm saying
Like what?
People, a lot of times whiteness is invisible. And so what I'm going to try to explore is a little bit of that historical structure.
How could whiteness
actually came to be.
How could whiteness possibly be invisible if it was just about the color of your skin? How could that possibly work? That makes no sense. Because whiteness is not a skin color, whiteness is an ideology.
But what we need to think about here is that when it comes to racism and whiteness, this is not an aberration. These are predictable outcomes that we're talking about here. You know,
Yes.
I get interviewed quite a bit throughout the country about, and I'll be willing to bet you dollars to donuts. There was some fraternity party across the United States where people showed up in blackface over Halloween. I haven't checked the newspaper, haven't checked Twitter. I've been a little lax on social media because that is good for my mental health. But at the same time, I've been willing to bet that stuff like that happens, or a south of the border park, or something like that. And people keep asking, well, what's wrong? What's wrong with these students? The University of Oklahoma had a viral video go viral a few years ago where members of this SAE fraternity were caught singing "There Will Never Be an N-Word in SAE," and the president said, "There's an outrage. We have a zero tolerance policy for racism at the University of Oklahoma." And I retorted in Al Jazeera America, if that's actually true, you're going to still hack your class by winter break. And I know that's not an empirical question. That's me just talking smack publicly. It's different. But
wait, he thinks that winter break is racist?
These structures are so deeply embedded in our institutions that it's not like, oh, well.
I don't know if you guys caught that, but he literally just argued that winter break on a college campus is racist. A vacation is racist.
Here's a bad apple, and here's a bad apple. It's part of the plan. Yes, I do pop culture things because I have a 12-year-old son, and we communicate like this. Or I'm going to communicate with you sometimes like this.
Oh, that's ironic that he used Joker.
There is actually a strange wisdom in what the Joker said. He said, because if you go back to The Dark Knight, he said specifically that even if the outcome is horrific, nobody bats an eye as long as it's part of the plan. And so you see, obviously these are sort of acute issues of white supremacy manifest on college campuses, but a key issue would be, for example, the systematic underfunding of community centers of color while concurrently elevating the largely white fraternity system housed on a lot of college campuses. Again, the underfunding is endemically embedded in there, and then we're like, well, why are our students not succeeding? Can you disinvest? It's very simple. It's not rocket science, but at the same time, it becomes invisible because it's part of the plan. Now, in order to dive into this, I'm going to nerd out for a second, but I'm also going to try to do about 400 years of history in the span of about 10 minutes. So bear with me on that. I'm going to be talking in very broad strokes.
Who knows what he is going to say about the history of how whiteness was created? Who has been paying attention on Happy Hour? How was whiteness created? He is going to argue that whiteness was created in what year? Close. Well, yes, it is going to be capital. 1619. Yes. It was created in 1619 when the first slave was brought to America. Even though that happened in the 1500s, it is not historically correct to say that happened in the 1600s, but we're just going to go with what he's going to say. He's going to say that whiteness was created when the first slaves from Africa arrived to the New World in 1619, and that the white men who didn't previously call themselves white because they were from Europe, so they called themselves English or French or Spanish or German or any of those things. Whiteness was invented when those people brought black slaves to America, and in order to differentiate themselves from the black slaves and to build structures that only support people who look like them, they called themselves white in contrast to black. And then they proceeded to build systems and structures that only benefited white people and oppressed black people. That was the creation of whiteness. That is why they say that racism was invented in America when whiteness was created in 1619.
But I do need to make one caveat. When I go into this history of whiteness formation, people frequently think, oh, there were like 4 white guys who were pulling the puppet strings, like something out of The Godfather. It's like, it doesn't work like that. I'm talking ideologically on a systemic level over many years, but I'm going to try to condense it, okay? So just bear with me and go on this academic journey with me. So, first things first.
Let's go on the journey.
Jose Leonardo is very clear when he says that whiteness is a racial discourse where the category white people represents a socially constructed identity usually based on skin color.
Socially constructed
Whiteness is
identity.
not a culture, but a social concept. Okay? Now, we're going to kind of dive into this. What exactly does that mean? I'm not going to break this down. It'll get broken down as we go into the different dimensions of what whiteness is and how it was created historically. What's weird when you are a critical whiteness scholar, as I am, you end up knowing that whiteness did not exist.
Oh, shit. He has a PhD in critical whiteness studies. He just called himself a critical whiteness scholar. Wow.
When colonization began in the 1500s. Now, am I saying that people from European descent came here and had no concept of their own ingrained superiority? Of course not. That's the foundation of colonialism. What I'm saying, though, is that they showed up on these shores and tried to occupy and steal the land, but they were primarily known by their country of origin. There wasn't like this unifying concept of whiteness. And what ended up happening, though, was that you ended up, there was a tipping point when Bacon's Rebellion occurred. And that is one of the more important historical moments.
Oh, Bacon's Rebellion. Okay.
For race relations in society. Because
see,
there were 3 blacks and 4 whites who defied the Virginia governor and said, you know what, we're going to take Indian land and move west. Virginia governor said, no, you're not. And they said, yes, we are. And they did it. And that scared the
Steven, king of the chat.
Not just because the governor's
king of the chat for the day. That's funny.
But because there was power realized by having a multiracial coalition. And that was at its foundation what really disrupted the ruling elite. And so they started, this is where it gets complicated. Just bear with me.
Okay, I want you guys, what am I noticing on his slide that might indicate to me that whiteness equals the bourgeois or the ruling class? That it equals the communist, the property owner. What am I seeing on his slide right now that might lead me to believe that whiteness is just a euphemism for capitalism because he's a Marxist professor that calls himself a critical whiteness scholar? What am I seeing on this slide that we have to read between the lines of? Yes, spot! Disrupting the working class. The working class. The working class, the workers, the proletariat, might be another word for it. Anytime you hear worker, think socialism.
They started articulating this thing called whiteness. And it was predicated upon saying that people of color, in this instance, at this point in U.S. history, with indigenous peoples and black people, are inherently inferior.
Worker is like a socialist
now,
dog
that
whistle.
was already part of the discourse.
I'm only saying that half
it was,
sarcastically.
because it was allowed for slavery and colonization. However, what was different about this one is it tried to become a unifying force and saying that we are white, we are better. It tried to form alliances across Italians and Jews and Germans and everybody who was of European descent. And we would give also minor amounts of token incorporation into the economic structure. And so what would end up happening is that you be on a slave people. You might be an overseer. You're not going to be wealthy, but you're going to be just a little bit above all of them. And it started to create an ideology of whiteness that didn't exist before. And that was what was talking
Whiteness
about.
Was created via social classes.
Christianity played a
That's
very
Marxism.
important role in it. And again, he made your caveat.
Hang on. He just said Christianity played an... Look at this. At the same time, Christianity played a very important role in the creation of whiteness.
And again,
Christianity is racism.
And he made your caveat. Shoot, I'm speaking in a church. I'm not going to talk mess about Christianity.
He's gonna say to some.
Okay? I'm saying that
there it is. Christianity is synonymous with the KKK. I knew we were gonna get there. Now, listen, man. You guys know I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of Christianity in the world, but I'm not sure I would compare them to the Ku Klux Klan. What he's probably, I mean, this is what he's showing is basically the KKK doing a photo op under a big sign that says Jesus saves. Nice. Okay.
That in this instance, the way it was used, some people say misused, was specifically to say that Christianity is ideologically part of. We say, well, why are we such a superior people? Why are we so advanced? Why are we so enlightened?
I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it, that Marxist professors would argue this, because what they essentially need to do is they need to kill off anything that would take precedence over your adherence to the state. So they want to kill off the family. We've talked about that. They want all children to be born via surrogacy, so there are no biological ties. But they also need to kill off religion. Most Marxists are also atheists. They have nothing else. They have to kill it off. If you have a loyalty to God versus having loyalty to the state, that's not going to bode well for them.
And they say, well, why do we have Christianity? Because we're such an enlightened people. I think it's a weird, cyclical argument. And then really the underlying questions became, are non-white people advanced enough to hear the word of the Lord? That was sort of the parameters of the discussion at that point in time. And again, it's all predicated upon the racist belief that people of color are not people. They are either infantile or some other species, but they are not on the same level as white people. But again,
that spray was for a cold, because I'm coming down with something. They want to breed children in pods. Yes, they do. And do you know who's supporting that? Who is supporting the breeding of children in pods? That's going to be the pro-lifers, who are like, this is great. There will be no more abortion if we just create these pods in which we can house the children. When the mother wants an abortion, we'll just take the child out and we'll put them in a pod where they can continue to marinate. The pro-lifers are literally going to lead us to destruction. I want all of you to think about that when you're forcing your ideology on someone else. It's going to come back to bite you.
Again, religion played a central role in it, but I'm not condemning religion outright. I'm saying that it functioned. Then through that ideology of racial superiority, you ended up with what W.E.B. Du Bois referred to as public and psychological wages of whiteness. What that meant, in particular, into the brilliant analysis of post-Reconstruction America, And by the way, if you're an academic out there and ever really want to hurt your own feelings, read some of the book stuff like 700 pages in the early 1900s. I don't want to write a 20-page paper, so anyway, that's it. Let's just say his work is kind of impressive, and the fact that we're talking about it, 100 years after he wrote it. But what he said was that white people in this state, because whiteness was so ingrained in them, like you're white, you're white, you're white, and you are inherently superior and act like it, that they walked around with this public psychological weight of white, which meant that they would say, I may be downtrodden, I may be hurting, but at least I'm not black, at least I'm not native, at least I am, and being able to even say I am a person.
Pro-lifers are literally arguing to marinate children in artificial wombs to eliminate abortion. That's happening. They're not arguing to do that so the child can then go and be with the mother who birthed the child. They don't care about the mother at all. They're arguing for it so that the child can become a ward of the state, because at least that's better than not dying. What they don't realize is that they are pushing the very mechanism of their demise. It's not pro-family. When a woman wants to have an abortion and you're like, let's just take the child and put it in a pod, because at least then we get rid of all abortion. That's literally what's happening right now on the pro-lifer side. They are the ones pushing this shit. It ain't the left that's pushing for these fucking artificial wombs. It's the pro-lifers. And it has nothing to do with family. It has to do with them being control freaks who want to dictate other people's lives, and they're going to doom us all for it.
And a number of people, this has been attributed to Malcolm X, David Roediger, the historian, has written about this a lot, that upon arrival from Europe, that a number of European immigrants, one of the second word that they would learn was the N-word, only predicated by hello. Now, that's an oversimplification. But the idea is that upon arrival, European immigrants were taught anti-BIPOC racism very clearly as a way of creating a form of assimilation.
That's because you're not thinking, because you're focusing on enforcing your values on everyone else. Pro-lifers already fucked everyone over by pushing the repeal of Roe v. Wade. We're now getting completely off the topic, but I'm going to yell about this for a second, because apparently I have some pro-lifers in the chat. Pro-lifers fucked everyone over when they pushed to repeal Roe v. Wade. They fucked everyone over. Pro-lifers are responsible for losing the midterms, because you just couldn't hesitate to stick your nose into other people's business. And mark my words, pro-lifers are going to bring about their own fucking demise when it comes to these artificial wombs that they're oh so excited about, because literally all they fucking care about is abortion, babies, abortion, babies. And they don't stop to look at the big picture to see that they're literally playing into exactly what the left wants them to do. The left used all of you, used every single one of you to win the elections, will probably continue to use you all to win every close election for the rest of your lifetime on that Roe v. Wade issue. And you still don't listen. In 20 years, I'm going to have an I told you so moment when all of a sudden those fucking artificial wombs that you guys have been pushing for are used to start birthing children all via surrogacy, instead and starting to outlaw natural birth abortion, or natural birth, because it's so much safer. Do you fucking know what the socialists are saying right now? They're trying to convince people that pregnancy is dangerous. Why would a woman want to put themselves in danger by going through the harms of pregnancy? That's what they're doing. They've been doing that for years. I've listened to their speeches on the topic. That's going to be the next thing. You think abortion is the worst thing that can possibly happen? No, it's not. It's when the birth rate starts to go down because women stop having kids. Oh, wait, that's already happening. And what's the next step after that? It's going to be all kids born via surrogacy, via those fucking wombs that you guys were the ones that were responsible for it, because you don't fucking listen. That's all.
And that's how a number of historians have had these analyses of how did the blank become white? How did the Jews become white? How did the Irish become white? There's a whole series of books about them. But they all have a very similar arc. And it was basically a multi-pronged process. Give up your native culture and assimilate with whiteness. Be overtly racist towards non-white people and become white. But what's fascinating about, but also disturbing about whiteness is that it is an empty social category. It doesn't have meaning in it as an ethnic group does. And if you want to do a little thought experiment, a very easy way of doing that, if you are white or if you know someone who's white, talk to them and say, okay, what's your background? Well, usually get some sort of a math.
If you know someone who's white, they sound like it's a disease.
Italian, and that hurts my head. But the point being,
I don't know you, and so you're not allowed to say that to me. You're not allowed to. You're getting timed out for right now. If you ever insult me like that again, you won't be back.
you latch onto one of those. You're like, okay, fine. You said you're German. What's a German custom that your family celebrates?
Talking about pro-lifers who don't fucking listen.
Usually it's cricket. They say, what's a German custom? And usually it's like, well, Oktoberfest. Once you get
you just got timed out too, Spirit Matter. I'm not fucking
I'm
around.
Irish, St. Patrick's Day. Once you get through all that stuff, it basically becomes
and this is the point where pro-lifers are going to come in and be like, what do you know, you fat dyke bitch? I bet you that's coming next. This is what pro-lifers do every time. They don't fucking listen, and then they start to hurl insults. And then they don't fucking listen some more, and then they hurl more insults. And then they lose elections, and they wonder why. Anyone else want to insult me before we continue? Because I'm happy to time you all out. There are 2 rules in my chat. Don't be a dick, no whining. Unless I have named you king or queen of the chat, if you insult me, it's not going to go the way you think it will.
It shows you how perfect that assimilation is, because if you go to any BIPOC person and start asking what is great about being from your cultural orientation, folks are going to drop a lot of things. Right now, my people are all prepping. We're loosening our belts because it's tamale season. And we're going to put on a lot of weight. We all know it, and it's just going to happen. But it's part of our culture. It's where it's going to happen. I also love the fact that Cholos cry watching Coco, but that's a different thing together.
They do have an option. It's called adoption. You guys want to end the. You guys want to fucking be responsible for the downfall of humanity and to usher in actual socialism, which is not what we're experiencing right now, by the way. Pro-lifers are so easily fucking distracted. It's not what actually we're experiencing right now. We're not in a socialist world right now. But you guys are sure as shit going to usher one in because you cannot get over trying to control other people's lives. Come up with every excuse in the book to try to control other people's lives and force your religious values on other people. It's unbelievable.
But the point being,
every time, every fucking time.
This whiteness, it's assimilation into nothing. That also has some really weird psychological consequences, because it means that a lot of white people don't have great cultural roots for where it is that they come from. And that can have a lot of consequences in terms of appropriation.
And now his sound is getting even worse and worse and worse.
At the same time,
where did the captions go?
Category, the law played a central role in it. And so again, there were supposed to be these universal rights that were given to all people. Well, okay, if we're really technical about it, it was all men, and that was very specific to all men, and that we had to fight to get it so that it was all people together. But what ended up happening was there was supposed to be this universal standard of basic human rights that all of us were exercising. Through the legal construction of whiteness, what ended up happening was that rights were systemically denied to BIPOC people, so that if you were deemed not white,
whiteness as property.
You could not own land. You could not own a gun. You could not, and it was could not.
Whiteness as property. What have I said 8,000 times from Sunday? Whiteness is about who owns the power structure. Who owns private property? He's literally describing it there as whiteness as property.
Could not. And what ended up happening was that whiteness became defined through negation. All these things are not allowed. Whatever is left is white. It also becomes an interesting situation because with whiteness, you end up with what the scholar Cheryl Harris refers to as whiteness as property. And the easiest way to demonstrate that is actually part of being
Exactly, Deborah.
that people have sued for libel being white
That's right.
and being categorized as a person of color. They've been able to physically sue.
Do you know what else called for the abolition of private property? Anyone? What else called for the abolition of private property? Anyone have a guess? Abolition of private property? Bing! Communism! Actual communism! Actual communism! Exactly. Brooklyn Way says Marx trans liberation whacktivism plus pro-life fundamentalists equal thank you, please drive through population control, govern me harder, daddy. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. The pro-lifers bitch about socialism all the time and truly have no idea that they are the ones ushering us into a socialist reality because they don't fucking listen.
In a
Oh.
U.S. court of law because they have lost status in society not being labeled white. But never in the courts has a person of color been able to sue because they were mislabeled white for the same liable issue. That shows you exactly how deeply it is ingrained in our society. And so in the end, you have a very, very strange mix of the social, the economic, the educational, the legal, all coming together to create whiteness. But really the cultural ties that bind whiteness together is the ideology of inherent superiority and then also the harm and the violence against BIPOC people. Because it's not just like, I think that I am inherently superior, but people have to act upon that. And that is where the racialized violence
Wow.
occurs. At the same time, though, whenever I get to this point, this is where usually there's...
Hang on, I need to take a picture of this here slide. I just need to, sorry. I need to tweet this out.
You know, a bunch of skeptics who were, well, yeah, that was in 1650. What about now? Well, first things first, if we're going to be labeling this, we need to talk about it accurately. And I appreciate how this has been coming around, that white supremacy has been a much more normal terminology used in contemporary time. However, a lot of times I talk about this as kind of Inigo Montoya terminology, for those of you who know the Princess Bride, again, I've been watching this month. But he had that one phrase with Manzini when he's like, inconceivable.
I'm sure you're a good conservative Christian, aren't you? Still bitching and complaining. Aaron, I promise you, if you continue to whine about the fact that I timed you out for insulting me, you are not going to be around very long. If you want to stay and learn, you are welcome to stay and learn. But I'm not going to have this bullshit in my chat. I'm not going to have this whiny, complaining attitude. Open your fucking ears and listen, and maybe you will learn to see why what you're doing is going to lead to actual socialism. Nick says, Noel said on Tim Pool, nobody impose views on me because they are wrong, but he can impose views on others because he is morally right. That doesn't surprise me at all. I lost all respect for Michael Knowles after watching that astrology video yesterday. That was fucking awful. He was awful. Can anyone tell Aaron why he's about to get blocked if he keeps whining? You did. One of the rules, Aaron, is that if I tell you to stop doing something, you stop fucking doing it. You don't continue to fucking complain. That's your last warning, buddy. You keep complaining, you're gonna get banned.
And the point here is that people turn to white supremacy, but then it becomes labeled as a Proud Boy. Talking about Charlottesville. It's talking about people who overtly are white supremacists instead of labeling it as the structure in society of racial oppression that creates the racialized violence that we experience at the ground level. And at the same time, we need to be very clear that racism very much did not die out, but was definitely transformed. I'm trying to talk and chew bubblegum at the same time. There were two things that happened because of the 1960s. That it fell out of favor to use overtly racist terminologies and profess inherent superiority vis-a-vis whiteness. However, whiteness became re-articulated as a form of social normality against which all other people are judged. And that social normality creates an insulation of what I call a white immunity from the disparate treatment that people of color receive on a regular basis. But if you want just a very simple example of how this normality occurs, how we talk about whiteness without talking about whiteness, come February, what do we study every year? Black history. I was going to say, in this audience, I better get a quick response on that. Come on now. I'm talking to the students, like, step up next time. But yet we do not.
It is indeed.
The reason for Black history becomes that history has been whitewashed. And we do not talk about it as white history. We don't say, oh, hey, here comes July. It's White History Month. Here we go. We're going to talk about Alexander Hamilton. And so the point being, though, that and I use this as kind of humorous, but remember that it is still an epistemic violence against people of color by normalizing whiteness and then saying, oh, if you think if we can give you a little token of corporation here, maybe that'll help out a little bit. But it doesn't radically transform the social dynamics that create racial oppression in the first place. So now, I've been talking really high-minded. Now let's get real. On campus, what does this mean? Well, first of all,
hang on. Nick, please do not hide people. Please do not. Because that was not me. And now I have to go in and unhide because I don't want people wrongfully hidden because it is impossible to unban people once I do it. So please don't do that. For my mods, I only want you to put people in timeout. I do not want you to actually ban people from the channel because I can't undo that if there's a mistake made. So please, I will be the only one who is banning people.
If you want to ever identify whiteness on a college campus, just look at the times that people break the rules, the traditional rules of how people are supposed to engage on a campus, and if they get away with it, that's usually a manifestation of whiteness. What do I mean by that? First things first, we're supposed to be meritocratic in higher ed. It's supposed to be that, hey, you're really smart, you're right to the top, you get rewards, etc. And that is especially supposed to be true in the Ivy Leagues. Well, if you study the Ivy League institutions from the way that they were founded, first things first, it was all white men. And there was this thing called a gentleman's seat. Don't try that hard. Just get the social capital by being able to exist among the elite. Don't worry about it. It's okay. Which is precisely why when W.E.B. Du Bois graduated from Harvard, he said specifically that the honor is all theirs. And he meant that. It's a pithy retort and mic drop moment, but he meant that. At the same time, once they started trying to bring people who weren't just of the aristocracy in, you know who started really getting a lot of access were Jewish people. Do you know what the Ivy Leagues did? Created quotas. You can only have this many Jewish people in here, and boom. Keep the Jews and the Gentiles separated, never the twain shall meet. It got so ridiculous that people I think it was Princeton. The Chosen is a big book. Something is skipping my mind right now. Seriously, it's one of those that, like, if you need to prop up a table, anyway. But it's one of those things that they would select an incoming freshman class to have an average of 6 feet height because leaders are tall, and we want to have leaders. I mean, I'm 5'8". I'm out of luck, I guess. But the point being that it's supposed to be meritocratic, but at the same time, it obviously wasn't. And what's really fascinating right now.
Well, can't you say the same thing about affirmative action, which is about to get struck down by the Supreme Court? Can't you say the same thing today about affirmative action? I mean, we can point to Asians being docked because they're Asian, simply because of their race. Because if Harvard was only admitting people based on meritocracy, All right, Aaron, now I really am blocking you goodbye. You were warned 18 times from fucking Sunday. If Harvard was only looking at meritocracy and didn't look at race, then the entire freshman class would be Asian. That's just a fact. Which is one of the reasons that it's about to get struck down by the Supreme Court.
Have people suing Harvard University trying to say that the admissions process is unfair, and also the University of North Carolina. You know what they're not going after are legacy admissions. They're not saying, hey, my daddy went to Harvard, so I got a leg up and I go to Harvard. Because those folks actually outnumber affirmative action admits almost 4 to 1, and at the same time,
but he's for affirmative action.
White and overly
Got
white.
it.
No, I don't know how someone would be overtly white. Let me try that again.
Oh yeah, affirmative action is
Stop
going
pointing
down.
out your own mistakes.
100%.
Okay.
I mean, not 100%. Nothing is 100%, but like I think
They're
it's going down. I really do.
overwhelmingly white and overwhelmingly wealthy, but yet these folks are saying, well, it's just about fairness. It's just about fairness. No, it's not. This is a direct attack on the ability to take account of race in admissions processes, and it means maintaining white supremacy in the process. Don't get it twisted. It has nothing to do with fairness. Ed Blum and his crusade has never been about fairness. It's about keeping people of color in our collective place. At the same time, now this is a fascinating history. If you read about the history of the SAT, in some respects, it was actually created to be actually more meritocratic. It was actually constructed to say, no, just because my dad went to Harvard and I exist, he's a businessman and I can get to Harvard, etc.
No, this will never happen. Also, gay marriage just got codified into law. This will never happen. Conservatives and I'm sorry, if conservatives continue to fight the gay marriage battle, there is no fucking hope for you guys if you continue to fight the gay marriage battle. There's no hope, truly. Leave it alone. Don't touch it. Don't go near it. Leave it the fuck alone. Stop focusing on social issues.
They actually said, well, the initial intention was that we want the sons of farmers to be able to compete with the aristocracy and be able to gain access. Noble intention. A couple of problems. Number one was that it was rooted in faulty assumptions of intelligence. So it still kept measuring, as the recently departed legal scholar Lenny Jr. said, the best thing that the SAT became good at predicting was whether you're white and whether you're rich, as opposed to how well you're going to do in school. And at the end of the day, what was supposed to really disrupt social gratification was the tool of social gratification. And it's the same thing about taking one step forward and 2 steps back. Because higher education historically has had to be wanted to expand, not to be overtly elite. And that's where we get places like Puget Sound and Oregon State that aren't necessarily the elite schools, but do a very popular function and serve a lot of important people in the process. But the problem is that the land grant institutions, as a lot of native scholars have recently been critiquing, are also land grad institutions. Because it's not like there was no one here when our institutions were founded. And as a consequence, my dear friend and colleague Amanda Ticini makes the argument that as historical debt was previously discussed by Dr. Livingston, specific to indigenous communities, that we have a land debt that each of us owes. Even in under-resourced institutions, we still are a multi-million-dollar a year enterprise. As a consequence of that, we have a great social responsibility with that. We need to move beyond land acknowledgement and actually have a land responsibility vis-a-vis indigenous population. I have greatly appreciated how the land acknowledgement here has evolved a lot more than what I have seen. Well, okay, I'm going to say this real quick. Our provost back at the U of A was a white South African. Let's say he was struggling on issues of race, and he said, thank you. We acknowledge the U of A is on the ancestral lands of the Tohono people who loaned it to us. And we were like, oh yeah, but then we were like perking up in the honest one. So what's the interest rate on that loan? Because I'm thinking the vig is coming in. But anyway, that's beside the point. All right, but just circle of trust. We'll keep that here. At the same time as institutions of higher education, now this is where we have to start thinking intersection, primarily economic issue. As public ed,
So the reasons I don't really stream that much in locals is because I want to be able to show my screen, and locals doesn't offer any integration that allows me to do that. If locals actually updated their live streaming, which they promised to do over a fucking year ago, and allowed me to plug in something easily where I didn't have to be like a wizard to like patch 15 things together to be able to show my screen, which is how the people who are doing it, then I would do a lot more in locals. And hopefully they do it at some point.
public subsidies have been decreasing, it means that institutions have been largely going out of state trying to be more entrepreneurial in order to make up that bottom line. The
I would love to be
impact,
able to use it. There's no
however,
reason
has
to.
been
Well, I mean, I suppose
that
there is, but
state
like it's a pain in
institutions
the
of higher
ass.
education nationally. Now, I'm not speaking. I haven't gone over the IR data here. If it holds, it holds. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But it means usually that it pushes out BIPOC students and it pushes out low-income students, which basically makes sense. Like if you're at the bottom of the ladder and then the institution's trying to bring in other folks, usually that means someone can get.
Why do you guys think that these people are targeting liberals rather than conservatives? Because look at the name of that book, The Neoliberalism War on Higher Education. Why are these people attacking liberals rather than conservatives? One might argue they're attacking people on their own team, but are they? Sin says liberals have the power and the institutions. Yeah, that's part of it. What might be another part of it? How do progressives feel about Joe Biden? Do progressives like Joe Biden? They're pushing the Overton window. That's definitely part of it. Because the real communists hate the Democrats. They hate the moderates. They hate the liberals. They possibly hate them more than they hate the conservatives. Well done.
Very predictable. And I know this is going to come as a shock, but empirically, higher ed scholars have been showing that institutions of higher education have been doing outreach in more affluent and whiter areas. And one of my dear friends and colleagues, Karlyn, who actually she started thinking about this because she was third in her class in South Tucson Barrio School and got zero recruitment from the University of Arizona, where she's now a professor. And so, but she took her cultural instinct and turned it into a workable hypothesis and came up with this. But she always has this way of saying that if it's kind of no kidding in my community, but shocking to the New York Times, I've done my job. I'm like, Karina, salute you, good job. At the same time, there's always this question, you hear this hand-wringing from institutional leaders, the president all the time. Why don't we have more students from blank place? Again, Tucson is the south side of town. I'm sure that, so we've had these conversations. There's always that side of town. Why aren't there more people from that side of town at our institution? That is inherently the wrong question that we have to ask. The right question is, why is the U of A not in South Tucson? Why is Stanford not in East Palo Alto? Why is the University of Washington, et cetera? You get the idea, right? Because what's interesting is that our institutions do have a finite amount of resources, but what they end up doing is they all are trying to get the quote-unquote best and the brightest, which again, usually means white youth, means that one. It means high test scores and high grades. But these are not students who, for them, in a minor institutional investment, means going to college. And you know how easy it is to get low-income students to your program? Just show up and engage with them. You know who is
It's
engaging
actually
with
not
them?
that easy. I was a
Military
college recruiter for a while.
DeVry University, the for-profit ones that are going to try to, exactly.
That's true.
Those are the ones who are competing. Whenever you want to talk about where people value stuff, look at their investment. If they're not investing in outreach to low-income minoritized communities, they obviously don't value it. But they don't like hearing that because it becomes this, I value everybody.
I'm going to tell you this. I was a college recruiter for, I don't know, like 5 years. So I was one of those people that went around to like college fairs and stuff like that. And when you are like on the road, you do high school visits in the day and then you do college fairs in the evening, okay? Let me tell you what happens when you go to a high school visit. You show up as the college person that is there to recruit people, and you go sit in the guidance office and no students show up. It was extremely, extremely, extremely rare when I was out on these trips that anyone would even come and talk. And we're not talking about ritzy areas. Like I traveled all over New England. I went to all different types of schools. Like kids don't fucking show up. So don't tell me that these places aren't trying, because they do try. The problem is that the students don't actually show up. No, I recruited for a military school. Well, I mean, it wasn't all military. It was Norwich University in Vermont, which is like very it's on the spectrum. It's more conservative.
Everybody's the same, but actually we're all individuals and they're all beautiful stuff. Anyway, that used to drive me nuts. Still does. There is a mythology though, because we're so caught up in the logic of U.S. News and World Report ranking, trying to say, hey, we are the best two-year institution in the southwestern United States that costs less than $10,000 a year. It becomes a ridiculous way of saying you're trying to say we are the best at something, all of our. But what's fascinating though is that if you look at the aggregate trend in higher education
No.
need-based aid, the stuff people really need, has gone down. Merit-based aid has gone up. What that means is that our institutions are subsidizing people who don't need the money in order to appear more prestigious in the process. Again, aggregate trend, don't know if it's happening here. If we were in Vegas, I'd probably put money that it is, but it's a working hypothesis instead. So usually I'd stop here and say, like, higher education is screwed, our history sucks, and I'm done with all this stuff. All right, peace out, I'll talk to you later. That's a little inappropriate, and also it can really foster some nihilism. So this is where I'm going to talk a little bit about some ways I've seen people do really interesting work at disrupting and trying to divorce higher education from whiteness in the process. Because my former department head, Gary Rose, who's also very much into academic labor, has always said everything is negotiable. It also makes him kind of like a 3-year-old. And I don't mean it as intellect. I mean it's when my 3-year-old son would be like, why? Well, this is the way it's done. Why? And he would negotiate like that, like try to ask, why are things the way that they are? So he's a pain in the butt, but he's a pain in the butt for a good side. So just bear with me. First things first, people who are working with our BIPOC students need to self-evaluate
What a photo.
how it is that we view our students. Because it's easy to see
wow.
Our BIPOC students are not doing as well as white students. It's easy to say that our BIPOC students are underrepresented relative to our white students. How do you interpret that is where deficit models come in. And it's very easy to be, hopeless. Oh, you poor thing. Oh, nobody wants to be the target of sympathy. I want to be engaged in radical empathy, which is a different thing altogether. That is,
oh yes, he's radically empathetic as the critical whiteness studies professor.
If your success is my success and my success is your success, then we need to be lifting each other up in the process. The problem is that this mythology is so prevalent in our culture. You know, you had, well, y'all wouldn't know this, but there was a movie called Dangerous Minds a few years back. It's a really bad movie. Don't watch it. Michelle Pfeiffer, she wears a leather jacket. It's like, I'm a Marine.
It is a bad movie.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, no. And then a few years later, then you
but not for that reason.
And then a few years later, then you had Don't Crack Down. And then, except it's the same movie. It's just repackaged, you know, and that white savior complex, The Blind Side, Gran Torino. Oh, you know, these long kids can't exist unless, you know, overtly racist and he's come to save them. And the problem is, even though it is Hollywood, there's a relationship between the viewing audience and what we want to hear. And so because these are so ridiculously popular, it means that it's speaking much to the consuming audience. And it's very
and he's not even white.
These views about that really they just need their white savior. So instead of working with, you're working for BIPOC community, and ultimately nobody can save it. And so instead, if I highly encourage folks to go to the Fund of Knowledge approach with my dear friend and colleague, Julio Rios Aguilar and Judy Yama. By the way, it was awesome. They wrote this book while both of them were pregnant, which that really doesn't mean anything, but I'm in awe of that they were able to focus and put out something so
Wait,
brilliant.
only students of color are holders of
general,
community
but
knowledge? That
anyway,
seems a little bit racist to me.
I sometimes function like that dog in the movie Up. You will be my master, and I'll squirrel. So forgive me for academically swirling every once in a while, but I'll come back. There's a method to my madness. But what Funds of Knowledge challenges us to do is to see BIPOC communities as holders of community-based knowledge. And then pedagogically, what we have to do is figure out where that knowledge exists and build upon that. Forget about our students being blank slates that need for empty vessels that need to get filled. They need to be seen as people who have had experiences, who have learned, who have engaged and grown up to this point, and even where they're at in order to build off of that. However, there's a difficulty with this. He says on a very regular basis, we cannot assume that being of a particular race means that you are an expert in these issues either. So we don't want to be tokenizing our engagement regarding where it is that they're at. We don't want to make sure that they're like the cultural experts. Like, well, now to talk about Black issues, to talk about indigenous issues, no, that's inappropriate. The balancing act, but still seeing them, moving away from them as being empty vessels or in need of a web page is ideological. At the same time, we have the issues of faculty recruitment and retention because, again, you bring in BIPOC students, you got to have some BIPOC faculty. Otherwise, what ends up happening is the folks who are here end up paying Black tax, brown tax, indigenous tax, which means that we love you all as BIPOC students, but there's so few of us and we get stretched really thin, really fast. And so we need a lot more people who actually do this work. But unfortunately, our institutions need to go through the same networks, to prioritize the same institutions, to recruit from those same areas, and we end up with the same result. And there's a quote attributed to Einstein, which is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Unfortunately, when it comes to recruitment and retention and higher education, it's exactly what we do. And then we wonder, well, why are all of our BIPOC faculty leaving? Well, because you haven't substantively changed the nature of the institution, supporting them culturally, supporting them financially at the future as well. And so again, critique, there should be something to fill that in. A really important way that some folks have been able to do is fund for hire and saying that folks are going to come in as a cohort, as a group. And so
He did, Vince, didn't he?
Only one in a specific area. And then also, there have been a lot of race-forward collective mentoring strategies so that people feel more part of a community. And I don't mean mentoring as in, hey, I'm your mentor, you're my mentee. We're going to have a relationship. I'm saying building community that creates a knowledge flow and a community connection that can be a foundation of retention process. At the University of Arizona, I got a lot of critiques from my home institution, but I'm very proud of this. They have a strategic hiring fund called SPIFFY. And it's not just that they bring people in as a method of diversifying, but they also make sure that people know each other across the institution and as cohort and are mentored and collectively together. Is this radically reforming everything? It's pretty substantive. We're talking about 10% of our faculty are now brought in through this. This is actually, over the course of time, it has substantive needs. Are we where we want to be? Absolutely not. But have we made a lot of progress? Absolutely. There's always this question. Institutional leaders consistently say, our institution values diversity. We value diversity. Well, if you value diversity, then take it. And that's a difficult thing because a lot of times, and this was a situation where the University of Arizona. Now I'm going to go back to the deep plan. But the U of A was having a lot of issues where the president was saying overtly racist things towards Native American students, and some of the Native American leaders were brought into the central leadership meeting to talk about, well, why was this inappropriate? Be talking. I mean, using their great cultural knowledge gained over 3 decades to actually help people. They're still, even though they're upset, they're still wild, they're still building. And after a while, we said, look,
Have a good day, Redwood.
each person around the table was making over $250,000 a year. The president was making almost $700,000 a year, including bonus. And he was like, no. And so they said in response, and they put this on Facebook, they created an indigenous brilliance invoice where they actually documented all of the hours that they had volunteered and at a reasonable consultant rate.
Oh, I think we're going to be watching an even crazier one
Because
tomorrow,
again,
Zacho. Make sure you
why
join
is
us.
it that institutions would invest millions of dollars every year in having lawyers, accountants, people in the business office, who secure grants, all these people, because they value them. But they say, hey, we value our indigenous students, but these are pennies on the dollar. They wouldn't do it. And in some respects, a lot of times BIPOC faculty staff end up doing diversity trainings pro bono for our students. You know what? We're already taxed doing service because there are so few of us, and there's beautiful rising numbers of BIPOC candidates. We're already taxed out regarding how much we're investing in institutions. You want more? Why not try to create people who are on retainer? Keep a lawyer on retainer, keep your DEI expert on retainer as well. Academic performance reviews. Oh, these are tough because
they're saying academic performance reviews for faculty of color are racist.
We in higher education institutions,
wow,
we are excellent at incentivizing behavior. In particular, we are great at incentivizing bad behavior. And what he meant by that was that you have to look at annual performance reviews and understand that they are arbitrary criteria. They are supposed to reflect excellence, but we're not 100% sure if they actually foster excellence. And how do we define excellence is a very important issue as well, right? Like, how can you say that you value diversity if you're not saying, hey, you know what? Dean, department head, what do your diversity numbers look like? And that's going to be a core criteria for your advancement. There's a climate survey that goes out. How are BIPOC students responding to that? And that's part of it. No, it's just how many dollars did you raise? What do your faculty numbers look like? What do your enrollment numbers look like? And that's it. What does that do? It commodifies students. And then it always makes a perverse, in particular because a lot of it goes to retention and graduation. And we do know that a lot of our BIPOC students come in with lower grades, they may struggle. But again, the additive versus subtractive approach, the deficit versus funded knowledge approach, it's easy for institutional leaders to say, I just don't want to take a chance on those kids that it could hurt my numbers. Instead of saying, wow, we really have a screwed up institution culture in order to actually be accommodated, to actually be supportive and create beautiful structures of the technical facilitators. And so again, we have to ask ourselves, what are the criteria and what are they incentivized? And I love this idea of social justice curriculum. And I've been deeply involved in the U of A in general education because every institution has some kind of a diversity requirement, but not all of them are equally effective at doing what it is that we're trying to do.
Oh, what did he just say? What did he just say? Oh God, his sound is so fucked up, so you might miss it. He just said something to the effect of, he loves social justice curriculum because every university now has some sort of diversity requirement in their curriculum. He just said the quiet part out loud. This is why we watch full form from start to finish, even when the sound sucks, even when they don't know how to work their own equipment. This is why we watch this. Let's just go back. Again.
And so again, we have to ask ourselves, what are the criteria and what are they incentivized? And I love this idea of social justice curriculum.
Look at the caption. Look at the caption. He didn't say socialism, but isn't that a funny caption, automated caption, Freudian slip? That is possibly the funniest caption that has ever come up in the history of Happy Hour. All right, I'm gonna rewind a little bit.
And I love this idea of social justice curriculum. And I've been deeply involved with the U of A in general education because every institution across the country has some kind of a diversity requirement, but not all of them are equally effective at doing what it is that we're trying to do.
University of Arizona,
Actually,
watch
some
out.
people
That's what
are.
he's talking about.
They're very effective at watering down racial criteria, race-based curriculum, and actually not having any teaching. So in a sense, they're actually functioning as a form of whiteness in that case. But the beautiful scholar Ronald Takaki asked a very difficult question in the preface to his book, A Different Mary. He said, what happens, to borrow from the words of Adrian Rich, when someone with the authority of a teacher
The universe
describes
knows.
society and you're not in it? Such an
Does.
experience can be disorienting, a moment of psychic delivery, hence the beautiful metaphor of
All right, I'm busting out the DOS Hydra.
Race through the United States. But again, we need to be careful about this because it's interpreted to mean, hey, I'm going to take out Shakespeare, put in my Anglo, there's a different mirror for you. No, that's just curriculum. But remember, you cannot separate curriculum and pedagogy at the same time. And it can create a very, very, very bad form of tokenism. Because in terms of actually challenging students to think differently about race, in order to understand white privilege and racial oppression, in order to understand white supremacy and colonialism, in order to understand how these systems have been created and what it is that we can do about them, heroes and holidays, schools and fiestas has never worked. It never worked in the 90s, it never worked in the 2000s, it doesn't work now. Here's an egregious example of that. The state of Texas was trying to pass a Mexican American studies requirement. This was going to be one of their textbooks, the Mexican American heritage. Okay, sounds nice. I was asked to review it for the Huffington Post, and I got to.
He was asked to review it for the Huffington Post.
What in the world is this? The narratives were ridiculous. They would say things like, prior to Manifest Destiny, Texas was
We can't have
barren
fiestas?
wasteland, no law, and
I bet he
the
doesn't want us to eat
settlers
tacos
came
either.
and created order. They gave as much space to Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan as they did to Cesar Chavez, and this was going to be a required textbook. Thankfully, through some activism through both students and professors in Texas and Austin in particular, they were able to really pressure it and the State Board of Education to not do this. This is an egregious example, but the point is, tokenism in the curriculum doesn't work. But again, critique, I need something there. If you want to look at what really works, look at Sleater's a lot of.
I bet he hates Taco Tuesday.
And they lay out 7 core tenets. Curriculum is counter-narrative. America is the land of opportunity. Well, no. There's a parenthetical question there. Land of opportunity for whom? Who has succeeded?
Everyone.
Who hasn't? And allowing narratives that challenge that to emerge. Criticality, looking at.
You're gonna tell people that they can't succeed when you're a college professor, bro? Are you white? You seem to be doing just fine. Stop telling people they can't succeed.
That's oppression. And saying that they are endemic and not aberrations to American society. Reclaiming cultural identities, understanding that white supremacy and colonialism, that cultural identities have been erased from a lot of our students. So sometimes you provide a different mirror and it allows them to see themselves. Sometimes ethnic studies is a form of reclamation because that identity has, you can put that mirror up.
Intersectionality.
Experience it. Because, for example,
look what's at the bottom of his slide. Students as intellectual. That's Palafieri. I got James Lindsay's Marxification of Higher Education, or not of Higher Education, Marxification of Education book. It's sitting on my desk. I'm pretty excited to crack it open. But look at that. Students as intellectuals. That's Palafieri.
When my father was growing up in Southern California, his first language was Spanish. You spoke Spanish in school at that time, you would get hit with a ruler. They would say, put your hand out. The 5-year-old children flinched, you turned your hand over, got it on the knuckle. Those are systemic ways that you unlearn your cultural heritage very fast, which concurrently means
Is that still happening in
Okay,
schools? Are
you
people
drop me
still
a
getting
TJ,
hit
I'll
on the
be okay,
knuckles for
but my
speaking
fence,
Spanish?
it's really bad, but there is a historical reason as to why. Intersectionality and multiplicity, understanding that, again, even though the focus here is race, that there are overlapping, intersecting, and mutually sustaining forms of oppression, and that we cannot have racial liberation if we do not concurrently have an end to patriarchy. We cannot have an end to patriarchy if we do not have an end to transphobia. We cannot have an end to transphobia if we do not have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And community engagement is extraordinarily difficult. It really makes educators uneasy, because we do tend to get rooted in our office, in our classroom, and forget that there is a full community.
Andrew wants to know, can we do Lindsay's book for book club? Yes, we can. And it's I think it's a doable book. It's pretty thin, to be honest. Let me show you. I had my beer can sitting on top of it. So this is Lindsay's book. It's doable. I think it is. But we're doing Ender's Game for the next book club because I want to take a break and I want to read, and I like Ender's Game. Ender's Game is a good book. Also very relevant. But maybe we can do Lindsay's book after that.
A whole community of cultural research, a whole community that we should be engaging with, and a whole community that we should be dedicating to it as a form of kind of mutual aid. But if we're talking about scholarship, it cannot be just a book.
Where did the slide go?
Scholars out in the community that have lived lives,
What happened?
have experiences that we should be valuing if racial liberation is the largest portion of our work. The pedagogy is responsive, mediated, and discriminatory election. At the end of the day, it goes back to the knowledge that we do not treat students as empaths, but we see them as scholars in their own area, build upon, challenge,
I mean, I could ask him if he'll come and talk to us.
Doing this work,
he might do it. He's done it before.
Because we consistently forget that our goodwill will frequently be rebuffed even by those people who are our natural allies. In many respects, it's because higher education stands at an existing deficit with a balance overdue. And at the end of the day, there will always be pushback, but we continue to do it. Sorry, this was a very popular movie in the late 1980s, so I know. But it is important to do the right thing. And not just to do the right thing for doing the right thing. I can give you a million different arguments as to why it makes economic sense to do anti-racist work. But I am much more attuned and much more aligned to the way that Paulo Freire talks about that oppression.
He mentioned him. Paulo Freire.
Practices, which white supremacy and whiteness is one of them. That it is not just the oppressed who are dehumanized, but the oppressor.
No, I doubt it. He usually just comes and does it.
Experience dehumanization process. But through anti-oppressive practice, we collectively rehumanize each other in that process. We collectively start seeing each other as brothers and sisters, and we start to move beyond that and lessen a lot of the racialized violence that occurs on a daily basis, create monsters sense of radical empathy across different, and see this isn't a black struggle or an indigenous struggle or a Latinx struggle or an Asian struggle. It is a collective struggle that we are all involved in. Because at the end of the day, the challenge is, and the underlying question is, how is whiteness embedded within the institutional logics of our institution? How is it unconsciously embedded in the ideological orientations of ourselves? And how does whiteness form our everyday interactions? And most importantly, how does it lead to the violence that is occurring against BIPOC communities on a regular basis? And I intentionally leave with the question, because if I sit here and just say, hey, again, do these 10 things for anti-racism. After Black Lives Matter, there were so many book clubs that came up, and there were so many borderline racial charlatans that were like, hey, buy my book, Okay, I shouldn't say it because I do want to buy my book. But the point being that I'm not going to make any false promises within my book. But there were a number of false promises made. And I do not ever tolerate that because, again, it just becomes a way of profiting off of me. Because at the end of the day, our underlying challenge was summarized so beautifully by James Baldwin. And this really gets to the core of whiteness and particular white identity. It says that the collision between, and I'm sorry, this is sexist. He was writing in the 60s, but just, bear with me. This
Oh, he gets
collision
passed.
between one's image of oneself and what one actually is always very painful, and there can be two ways you can do about it. You can meet the collision head on and try to become what you really are, or you can retreat and try to remain what you thought you were, which is a fantasy.
There's nothing
And
sexist
ultimately,
about
what we're
that.
trying
What is
to do
sexist about that?
To divorce from the false promises of white privilege, to divorce ourselves from the false promises of whiteness, because it was meant as a focus of oppression. If that's what it was constructed to do, it doesn't. And please keep in mind, I'm saying this distinct from my white brothers and sisters who are in the audience today and throughout the community, because it only functions. We are only able to do this. We can only meet this position head on if we do this together. And that is our underlying challenge, because as the rapper Mortal Technique reminds us, no one can do everything, but everyone can do something. But we are only powerful if we do it together. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, good. Q&A. Q&As are always the best part, guys. Clapping is much louder. Oh, God. The clapping was so loud. Q&A. Did anyone get a
Thank you,
bingo?
Dr. Cabrera, for helping us to interrogate
Ooh, that's-
critically whiteness.
that's
for
quite a
helping us to
voice.
think about the implications for our institution and for our communities, for helping us to think expansively about the rehumanizing process. We have about 15 minutes where we can have conversation, discussion, questions. And so if you are in the room, I invite you to think about something that you have on your mind that you would like to ask Dr. Cabrera. If it's a thought that you are still processing, I invite you to think of the words to put that into words. If you don't have the words, I invite you to come forward and look for the words. We have about 15 minutes, and my job, by the way, I'm Jonathan Stockdale, teaching the Religion Department and Asian Studies, most junior member of the Race and Pedagogy Institute leadership team. My job is to pass the mic to whoever raises their hand. So we have time for questions.
As a quick aside, I have some egg in my face. I put the wrong quotation from Baldwin on. This was the one, I was like, there's something wrong with this. This is the one that I was trying to end on. So anyway.
The quotation that wasn't sexist?
Sorry, anyway, it says, yeah, it was when a man without, see, a man, that's what I was trying. A man is able without bitterness or self-pity to surrender a dream he long cherished or a privilege he has long possessed that he is free. That he has set himself free for higher dreams and greater privilege. That was the quote that I meant. I apologize for.
Thank you, Progressive Rising. You too.
But again, because that is our collective freedom is at stake by giving up the false promise. You never want to miss football. That's a big thing.
Okay, here we go.
Definitely talking to the mic, it helps everybody.
In your experience, is there an institute of higher education that is doing more things right at this point?
Ooh, give us a list, please.
Okay. That is a very, very, very difficult
Please
question.
tell us. He's going to be like Evergreen.
I will never say that one institution is doing everything right, because what that does is it creates kind of an icon. And, well, I'll use a corollary right here. The University of Arizona is one of the best universities in the entire country.
Oh! They turned his mic off. He is aware of the problem. No, we can't hear. Oh, excellent. Nope, can't hear that either. No, fix the sound. Fix the sound, socialists. You can do it. I believe in you. Everyone mount the like button if you think they can fix it. What the fuck? What the fuck? No, no, this is not better. This is not better, socialists. No, no, wrong. Oh, God, damn it.
Colleagues are doing the good work, but at the same time, I need to be very clear that success and progress frequently becomes an excuse for complacency. So I could say things like, the University of Michigan has a very promising program for the diversification of faculty.
University of Michigan?
But I don't want to concurrently say the University of Michigan is doing great, right? In many respects, if we want to look at a lot of very promising practices, we do need to look at tribal colleges and universities, well-established Hispanic serving institutions, and in particular,
Hispanic
HBCUs.
universities are doing it right. Okay, apparently. God damn it! Why are you doing this to us? Why do you hate us?
It feels more like a familial orientation. But there's also a social conservatism that goes within that, which reinforces gender binaries, which reinforces homophobia, which reinforces sort of the politics of.
Oh, so he's opposed to the gender binary.
So again, it's one of these things that in some respects that becomes each one of
He's Latino. It's okay. He's Latinx.
Is to seek out promising practices.
Probably gay too, just for
Because
like good
again,
measure,
I don't sit
or
here
pan or whatever the fuck.
And valorize a specific institution too much, because what it ends up doing is even about us looking on the outside, it pumps up their.
Yes,
their
I apologize for the socialists, for everyone who's
and
wearing
then it becomes
headphones.
super complacency on the inside.
They do this every
So
time.
I offered a couple of promising practices. Here's a couple more, and then your challenge and yourself and our collective challenge is to continue to both see other ones, but then also creatively reimagine what higher education can be. And that is a difficult process, because whiteness can be embedded in our mental facilities, and actually say that this is just as far as we can go, and limit our imagination potential because of it. Because, oh, it's not realistic. Well, if our entire higher education enterprise wasn't realistic to start off with. If we started off with it was realistic, we wouldn't do anything. But, oh goodness me, someone Google this. There's a very important quote that says the impossible is going to take a while. I forget who said that. If you find it, shout it out. That is something that guides me all the time.
Don't touch your microphone, bro. Don't do it.
Lights in my eyes. I just to stand up, I can barely see anybody in the back.
Thank you so much, Cabrera, for the talk, and I really appreciate it. Your book, I want to recommend everyone with a copy that I really
I cannot understand this person at all. They sound like the teacher in Charlie Brown. They're like, wah, 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 wah.
non-structural racism is important. So it's making me wonder what you think about how do we teach structural racism in a way that invites students, particularly white students, to see themselves in the structure?
Yes.
How do we teach structural racism?
Structural racism, but that kind of inward glance, that's going to be something that's really hard.
Absolutely.
It's probably like chapter 6.
Yeah, no, well, it's not chapter 6, but I will give you a slightly self-serving response to that. And one of the issues when it comes to race is that our racial discussions, a lot of people in social psychology, people like Brian Knowles and Miguel Sweat, that have demonstrated time and time again, that a lot of resistance to seeing racism as a structural reality stems from ego protection. What that means is that I don't want to see myself implicated in something.
He basically just said that people deny that systemic racism exists just because they don't want to say that they're a racist. It's all to protect their own ego. It's not because, there's no evidence of it and you aren't able to identify a single policy that actually, or a law or anything like that, that would correlate to there being systemic racism. It's only to protect the ego because people don't want to admit that they're racist. Emphasize says progressive stack doesn't apply because in their circle of trust they're all marginalized. Well, he's Latinx, so the progressive stack would still be Latinos are like maybe 3 down on the progressive stack. They're not the lowest of the low. And again, he's probably like gay or something too.
To racial liberation, as we've been talking about. However, I'm going to be careful about saying this because I don't want to come off as a charlatan that was critiquing a few minutes ago. But one thing I have found pedagogically is very effective is the concept of white immunity.
White immunity?
But it's a shift away from white privilege pedagogy. Because white privilege is frequently an issue of, I'll do it. I am a man, I have male privilege, I can,
Tell me all the things you can do that I can't do.
Appreciate it. I'm a man, I have male privilege, and so I can get very angry without people, questioning whether or not it's because I'm emotional or something like that, right? The problem with privilege-based pedagogy is that, there's a couple of ones. One, it tends to individualize the conversation. Number two, that there doesn't tend to be, because of that, there's not really a structural analysis as much. And number three, it tends to ostensibly center the narratives of the privileged group in that conversation. It can be very important for a racial awakening, but it centers whiteness in that process. So again, I respect the fact that maybe most of the time I'm not paying that much my privilege, but the idea that I can find a band-aid in my own, in my skin color, my children read textbooks that testify to the people of their race's existence. Those for me started being, that's more just a humane basis for interaction. It's not necessarily social privilege. And it goes back to what I was talking about in terms of the historical formation of whiteness. That there's a social inoculation that white people receive vis-a-vis white supremacy. And if you start talking about white immunity, you can't sit there and just confess I have white immunity because of X, Y, and Z. It asks a fundamentally different question. And I'm sorry, man, this is repeat from last night, so you're getting a double dose of it. What it does is it says, I have white immunity because something is not happening to me. And then the parenthetical question becomes, what is not happening to me? What is happening to communities of color? What is happening in my communities that I don't have to deal with vis-a-vis being a white person? And it starts to be personalized because it's not about your experience, it's about their experience. And then that actually does start to foster a form of radical empathy because it starts saying in the larger context that we're all part of one large social body, and if harm is being done to one, if we really say racism is evil, and harm is being done to all. And then it fosters empathy and responsibility if done appropriately in that situation. And so I continually think that in a number of the guys who I did interview, they would talk about, they were very much engaged with white privilege pedagogy. Almost all of them do.
He broke his own microphone.
Very few of them bought into it and were very resistant. And they had all these ways of diving around it. When my family came to this country, we had nothing. And we rose up and we struggled. So we are not privileged. It's basically, if you're not on a Trump or Kardashian level, you're not privileged.
Okay, so what I want you to take away from this, and I know it's hard to hear because they've broken all their microphones. These people suck at technology. But he is actually saying something very important. What he's saying is they're going to try to replace the term white privilege because white privilege isn't working because people are like, how am I privileged? I live in a one-room shack in Appalachia. What he's saying is they're going to try to replace the term white privilege with white immunity. This is the first time I've heard that term, but maybe we should just keep an eye out.
So my thinking is more about trying, and again, if there are other ways of doing it, that's great. But underlying it needs to be empathy, connection, and really a focus on social stratification and violence that's occurred. But that only occurs if you actually are willing to engage the narratives and the experiences of the systemically oppressed in society. And that hurts our feelings, but I can guarantee you that it hurts a lot more to be the subject of white supremacy than it does to emotionally learn about it.
The mic is back. I actually found what you talked about earlier, and it was by Karlyn holiday. And the whole book is political also right
Oh
now.
God, this is awful.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, that was. Thank you for doing my homework for me. I used to be able to rattle off quotes all the time, and now I've forgotten some attributions. So, yeah, my son likes making fun of me. He's like, "You're getting old." I'm like, I'm getting better, but he likes messing with me. He's my man better.
Thank you. I really enjoyed your talk. Thank you so much. I was wondering about,
God.
a lot of us are thinking of and have on our minds that there's a big budget deficit at this university that we're all kind of staring down. And I'm wondering a little bit about, you were talking about like the economic investment.
Oh God.
And, sort of the capitalization of the
capitalism. We got one. Capitalism.
And what the relationship between capitalism.
Oh, this is actually important. Okay, hang on. We can barely hear her, but she is asking a question that proves my entire point. Let me just read you. I will read you the captions because I can't hear this for shit. I was wondering about, there's a big budget deficit at this university. We're talking about economic investment piece of this and sort of capitalization of it would take to decapitalize the university. Capitalism and white supremacy might be all right. We're going to be here a while, so I'll go in. White supremacy and capitalism are inextricably intertwined around nations of white supremacy and colonialist, an incredible amount of wealth through capital development. Respects you can't really separate them too. So basically, she just said that capitalism and white supremacy are intertwined.
The pragmatic question is, we've got a budget deficit. We need to do this now. Well, this is where the rubber hits the road. Do you really value DEI work? Well, then if you do, then those are going to be the lines that you cut. That's just, and if you cut DEI folks first, which is what a lot of institutions have been doing, that shows, that's an indication that you're showing that these people are expendable in their work. You gave lip service to it, didn't really value it at the end of the day. Now, having said that, we need to remember that a lot of our budget deficits are artificially constructed through neoliberalist logic. Back in the 1990s.
Tell me you've never had a real job without telling me you've never had a real job. Did you hear what he just said? A lot of our budget deficits are artificially constructed using neoliberalist logic. Let's listen to that. And he got a big round of applause for saying that. Let's listen to that one more time.
Well, this is where the rubber hits the road. Do you really value DEI work? Well, then if you do, then those are going to be the lines that you cut. That's just, and if you cut DEI folks first, which is what a lot of institutions have been doing, that shows, that's an indication that you're showing that these people are expendable in their work. You gave lip service to it, didn't really value it. said that, we need to remember that a lot of our budget deficits are artificially constructed through neoliberalist logic. Back in the 90s, it was a Mendes applause line, but I appreciate it. Thank you. What we need to remember historically is that our institutions of higher education didn't cost anywhere near as much to attend 20, 30, 40 years ago as they do right now. But what happened was with the Reagan Revolution, which had been very, very successful in implementing a neoliberal logic in everything in society, is that
Neoliberal means conservative to them.
Public disinvestment within higher education, you see it within the public as a whole. And it doesn't seem coincidental to me that the institutional or the state disinvestment in higher education just happens to coincide at the exact same time that you have the highest number of BIPOC and low-income students that we've had in the history of higher education. Like, these do not seem to be, that is way too coincidental.
God, no, don't do it.
And so, at the same time, you have an ideological orientation that says that, these kids today,
sorry, everyone. It's not my fault that they suck.
they're learning about, women's living ideology and Black Lives Matter, but not really nuts and bolts. And this isn't just like a fringe critique of higher education. This is like, I watch Bill Maher every week, and he literally says it every week. It's the same nonsense spew, and it doesn't make it true, but people believe it, which continues. It's both a racist and a capitalist idea.
It's both a racist and a capitalist idea.
Good and not societal, but ergo we should disinvest from. Now, what's my overall thesis? If you really want to get, instead of reactive, and be proactive, there needs to be systemic organizing on a statewide level to have proactive investment within institutions of higher education. Until we start doing that, we're always going to be going from one deficit, one sort of manufacturing crisis of capitalism to the next. And I'm not saying that institutions of higher education weren't capitalist in the 1950s or 1960s or 1970s, but they did not have to exist in the same way, where basically the president has moved from being a thought leader to a CEO. It has moved from students being learners to students being consumers. And we're never going to go back to where we were before, but we can use that history as a way of creatively reimagining the direction that we want to go. Because again, what kind of behavior do we want to incentivize? And how do we want to make important investments? Those are all—
God, I'm so pissed that the sound sucks so bad.
So again, if people want to say we value this, then you actually put your money where your mouth is.
I want to put this all over the internet, but the sound is too awful.
This is always one of those times that you really learn very quickly and very deeply. Oh, you say Black Lives Matter on campus? Well, why was the black professor the first one you cut? You want to say, oh, here's our land acknowledgement, and we have all this land debt towards indigenous communities. Well, why have you not actually, why was the Native Cultural Center the first one whose budget got cut? It's not really an answer, but sort of a rant. So, but
Go ahead. Okay, maybe time for one more question. See where we're at.
Do you think that the individualism that is inherent in white supremacy was intentional to keep white people from understanding it as state-centered?
Something, community, something.
when it comes to issues of race, I always struggle with intentionality. I can always talk about function. And function absolutely keeps it in place. And I definitely think that it is one of those things that, we've been talking about, if white people are treated as individuals and BIPOC people are treated as collectives, then yeah, it becomes a very simple way of maintaining social dominance in that area. And probably the easiest way that you can see how that's manifest.
What if we just don't treat BIPOC as collective?
Like an active shooter, whenever it's a white person, they're a lone wolf, they're an individual, they're not representative of a larger issue. I mean, even the guy who went and attacked Nancy Pelosi's husband, it's like, they're like, oh, well, he was, yeah, he may have been shouting all this stuff, but he's just mentally ill. And by the way, I don't want to tangent here for a second. mental illness doesn't create racism, okay? And it drives me nuts when people are like, oh, well, Kanye West has mental health issues. Yes, he does. And he's anti-Semitic is all whatnot. Like, having mental health issues doesn't make you anti-Semitic.
That's true.
It doesn't make you sexist. It doesn't make you racist. And we need to stop that nonsense. It also doesn't make you increasingly violent. It's the access to guns and the constant targeting of people.
No, wrong.
Sorry, we just had a shooting on my campus. So these are
Access to guns does not make you violent.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to drop that on you. But oh yeah, we're talking about individualism. But the second that BIPOC populations do antisocial things, do violence, do harm, then it becomes a collective issue, right? That the shooter, when there's an active shooter, when it's Dylan Rowe, he's a lone wolf. But talk about all those black guys in Chicago who are killing themselves. Very easy to maintain white supremacy when you individualize the privileged group or the immune group, and then talk about marginalized groups as collectives. It's very, very strong, very, very clear that there's a massive societal double standard that very much does, and it allows people to, it allows folks to alleviate responsibility. It allows white people to alleviate themselves of responsibility because, hey, I didn't own slaves. I didn't support the tournament. My people, my grandfather marched with Dr. King at the Mall in Washington. And by the way, if anybody from the previous generation tells you that, no, like they've actually done empirical studies where there's estimates anywhere from 5 to 10 million people claim to have marched in Washington. You've seen the images. No. Dr. King scared white America. It was not, it wasn't the Santa Clausification of Dr. King. But the point being, the overall point being, sorry, I'm really going about candidates. But the overall point is absolutely that you're 100% correct. The individualizing of white folk leads to a lack of responsibility, leads to a lack of structural analysis, and then becomes a complete denial of white supremacy. And then, as Robert Silva reminds us, that the denial of white supremacy is white supremacist in its inception. Because it's exactly the same thing as if I was to go to the doctor and he says that I have cancer.
The denial of white supremacy is white supremacy itself.
Ignoring the diagnosis does not save my body, and ignoring white supremacy does not save our social process. As a matter of fact, it continues to affect and it will kill us if we don't do something about it.
Cool. I don't want to end the conversation, but I want to remind us that we do have another stage of the evening to go, which is book signing. And before we get to that, I want to hand the mic to Dr. Renee Sims for some closing thoughts.
Is that it? All right, that's it. We've suffered enough. Guys, I'm so sorry that the sound was so bad. I'm so sorry. But I think it's good that you always find out the real truth in the Q&A. Every single time. Never skip over the Q&A. I'm so pissed the sound sucked. They said the quiet part out loud about capitalism. That's really the biggest takeaway from today. If you are not yet on board with the idea that whiteness is interchangeable with capitalism for these people, they literally said it several times. We saw it in the captions. White supremacy and capitalism are inextricably intertwined. This guy said budgets are but a social construction that don't really exist. That's how these people think. They are Marxist. But that's all we have for today, guys. Congratulations on making it through an epic stream. You did it. You persevered. We can watch anything after that. And I want to put that theory to the test because tomorrow's Socialism Saturday is going to be one for the books. I know it. We are going to be watching a 2-hour queer Marxism roundtable that was filmed just the other day from our old friends, Haymarket Books. Haymarket Books are the sponsors of the Literal Socialism Conference. It's just called Socialism. And they did a 2-hour queer Marxism roundtable. And we will be watching that tomorrow, starting at 6 p.m. So I hope you guys will join me for Socialism Saturday on my main channel tomorrow. If you're not yet subscribed, maybe now hit that subscribe button for my second channel. But there is a link to my main channel in the description below if you are unfamiliar with it. But of course, I will also be streaming on Odyssey, Rockfin, Rumble, any other place that StreamYard lets me stream, basically. But guys, that's all we have for today. I'll see you guys tomorrow at 6 p.m. for Socialism Saturday. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.